Ho, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this year's Let's Dev Holiday Special featuring some big balls. The last time we improved the snowball throwing mechanics and added dynamic throw speeds. We also added an enemy unit with some basic movement and throwing AI. And we added interactivity between everything to create one heck of a chaotic snowball battle royale. Oh, and we also continue to display just why it's a bad idea to code not in the right state of mind. But anyway, as I promised last episode, today we're gonna kick things up a notch on the chaos scale. The plan is to add some new features to destroyed snowballs. Instead of simply deleting themselves, snowballs will have random effects added to their destruction code, which again are only meant to increase the chaos levels. So we'll be adding a less chaotic burst effect and a more chaotic effect in the form of a black hole. These effects will also feature slight variations to up the chaotic ante even further. Oh yeah, I'm excited, so let's not waste any more time and get to the chaos. First up was adding a switch to the destroy event of our snowballs. The first effect would simply generate a few snowballs that would burst out in random directions, kinda like a delayed spread shot of sorts. Then came the test where, no, I haven't frozen the screen, that's just what happens when you spawn snowballs that spawn snowballs, which collide with other snowballs that then spawn more snowballs. In other words, memory overload, crash, sad face. So clearly that wasn't going to work. Instead, I decided to add a new snowball, which based off the altered coloring is an ice ball of sorts. This ice ball would work similarly to the snowball, only, without the spawning of more balls. Also, they ricochet on contact. This resulted in a far more reasonable spread effect and thankfully wouldn't crash our game. You could also argue that these balls are even more chaotic than snowballs, since they aren't destroyed on impact. Anyway, with our first effect working, it was time for effect number 2. The second effect would be a variation of the spread shot, only this one would be more of a bullet hell style flower pattern, meaning a set of ice balls would be spawned equally around the snowball. And fun fact, I initially used the wrong number for the loop, which caused several bursts to happen at once. It was cool, but a little too chaotic. Anyway, using the right numbers resulted in a proper flower blast effect, which is kind of frightening if you think about it. I mean, imagine a snowball exploding like a grenade, only to discover that the shrapnel is, made of a bunch of ice. Yikes. Well, with that nightmare working, it was time to work on the even bigger nightmare, the black hole. So a black hole object was created with variables for size and a few timers we'll need for effect. The fade timer would determine the black hole's lifespan, while the flicker would determine the visual of the black hole itself, which would just be represented by a drawn circle. This black hole object was then added to the snowball destroy switch, and presto, we had a black hole. Now all we had to do was add the chaos factor. So in the tractor code, a check for any nearby black holes was made, and if said tractor is within pore range of the nearest black hole to their position, they would slowly be drawn in. This movement would be added on top of knockback and basic movement, meaning getting trapped in a black hole can be avoided, but for the most part, anything within sucking range is gonna get sucked. Now, getting sucked into a position to become an easy target is crazy and all, but why not kick things up another notch? Back in the black hole code, a pop boolean was added. When set to true, the black hole would use its new function to count a certain amount of time before spawning an ice ball in a random direction. Kinda like the burst/blast effect, but on a more manageable scale since, black hole. Anyway, forgetting to properly set the timer meant snowballs spawned every second, which resulted in an awesome fountain of ice balls. And again, it was ridiculously awesome, but also way too chaotic. So one timer fixed later and we had a much more reasonable, but still somewhat chaotic variation of the black hole. And finally, to make sure everyone wasn't getting sucked all the time, the chances of a black hole to spawn were dropped to whatever 5% of a 50% chance is. And the results were pretty crazy, but in a way, the chaos from the black holes kinda canceled out the chaos of the burst effects, since the suckage from the black holes would essentially negate knockback speeds, which is certainly not terrible, as I imagine something far worse than game breaking. So yeah, not as chaotic as I expected, but the month isn't over just yet. That means there's still time left to get more chaotic, and you bet I still have some ideas left to try out. So we'll see what this ends up being next time. But for now, that brings us to the end of today's episode of the Let's Stuff Holiday Special. So leave a like if you enjoyed the episode, subscribe and turn on notifications if you haven't already, and be sure to leave your thoughts on our progress in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.